If you live in Aotearoa, New Zealand, then you know the brand Anchor. It is one of the most iconic brands in the country. It is more than just a company that sells milk and dairy products. For many, it's a symbol of our powerhouse status as a dairying giant around the world. But what you might not know is the weird little urban legend around how it got its name and why there's no actual proof that it actually happened. In 1886, farmer James Reynolds set up in Pukekura, south of Cambridge, a small creamery where he came up with the idea of making butter and dairy products for the local farmers. With the help of an American neighbour, he changed the butter process a little bit, which helped make it taste better and last longer. And from there, the Anchor brand was born and grew and grew. In 2001, Anchor became part of the merger that would create Fonterra, with a slight problem that the government has said Fonterra would be far too big and it would cause far too many problems with monopolies, so they had to divest of the Anchor brand. They had to sell it off. So they did a swap with Tararua, which was at the time a relatively small South Island dairy company that hadn't really expanded very far. They did the swap. They had Anchor down there and it still managed to maintain its foothold in the market up here. Well, Fonterra took over Meadowfresh and expanded it across the country before 15 years later turning around to Tararua saying, do you want to swap back now that we've created another brand for you so that we don't have a monopoly? Which is what they did. And since then, Fonterra has again been in charge of the Anchor brand. They've gone through and they've created all sorts of huge products from around the world. Things like milk powder that gets sent to third world countries, canned milk that you'll find in some Asian countries. They even have production venues overseas, which is still part of the Anchor family, but using local dairy to produce local products for local markets. So this massive corporate entity that is the home of the biggest brand in the country, the most easily recognisable New Zealand brand ever, Anchor, where does it get its name from, considering it was created by a dairy farmer in the 1800s who lived in the middle of landlocked Waikato? This is where it gets interesting, because the official histories and urban legends around this all state almost exactly the same thing. Allegedly. According to legend. It's said, apparently, rumour has it. These are all different ways that the story of how Anchor got its name have been listed in official histories ranging everything from the Cambridge Museum all the way through to Te Ara Encyclopedia. Even the Fonterra website has a little bit of old 1970s pre-typed up documents scanned into their history page, which start off with, according to the story. There is no definitive way that the name came about, listed anywhere at all. And the story that they have is actually kind of a plausible one. It's that when Henry was sitting there setting everything up, one of his workers, or an engineer, or a dairy farmer, it varies on who you ask, had an Anchor tattoo on his arm, which was actually a pretty common style tattoo to have back then. However, things like short sleeves, not as common. He apparently drew inspiration from the tattoo, and that's where the name came from. And it's not implausible, it's just not verified in any shape, way or form. But it still ends up in the official histories everywhere. If you do a search for the history of Anchor, the very first thing you're going to come up with is the name and how this legend of where the name came from came into place. But nobody knows if it's actually true. And don't get me wrong, it doesn't take anything away from the brand to not know where it came from. It's, 1886 in the Waikato. I can't imagine that record keeping was high on their priority list. But it's interesting to sit down and see how the fact that it's a legend keeps being repeated over and over to a point where it's now almost felt like fact. But it isn't. And you can't prove that it is or isn't. And yet that's where our biggest brand name comes from, which to me seems a little bit weird. Anyway, that's me for this week. Nice short one for you. Hope you have a fantastic week ahead. I am going to hide because I think it's Valentine's Day today, and I fucking hate Valentine's Day. Alright everybody, ka kite anō. I will catch you all next time. If you enjoyed this episode, feel free to like, share and subscribe, where you can learn a whole bunch of other random stuff like the time that a small town sold its name to a lingerie company, or what the mysterious mystery is behind the mystery of Mystery Creek. Otherwise, feel free to tune in and listen to some of the other stuff that we've got. Check out the vlog or some of the strange short films that people seem to be enjoying for some weird reason.